Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This is finally my 2024 year in review, where I show you my ratings and rankings for each film that I watched in 2024, and I cherry pick a few films I want to specifically talk about. I originally meant for this video to be out earlier, even on December 31st of 2024, but it just took a lot longer to make than I was anticipating, and I worked on a few other videos, and just stuff happening in my life. But here it is. Thank you guys so much for everything and for watching. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Please forgive me for any mistakes visually or for any audio. And yeah, let's talk about 2024 films. But first, hi, my name is Tyler and I love film. And today I will be talking about my ranking, ratings, and reviews for 2024 films. First, I'll be starting with the film that I believe to be the worst of the year. That is Night Swim. Well, at least the worst of the ones that I've seen. And yes, Night Swim is a horror movie with a very dumb concept. And it's not even remotely scary, which I think is really its worst sin. It's not remotely scary. There's characters in this film that you just don't care about, and they have no real purpose in the film but to really be cannon fodder for the weird pool monster. And it's just kind of dull, lifeless, and boring. There's really nothing about this film that is actually good in any way. It at least functions in terms of its plot, which is why I don't give it like a 0, and that would be an achievement. This film is really just manufactured, pointless sludge, I guess, and it kind of just wastes our time. I give this film a 4 out of 10 for at least having a serviceable enough plot and somewhat attempting to be a horror movie, though completely failing. I won't be commenting on every movie and every placement and every rating in this because I feel like many of them that I don't talk about are self-explanatory, and this video would just be too long, and I don't think anybody really wants to watch that. Or listen to that either, for that matter. But yeah, all these films I'm currently showing on screen with their ratings afterwards are films I believe to be self-explanatory with the ratings that I give them, or at least that my thoughts on them are pretty much reflected by the rating itself. And I'm also using Letterboxd to format my actual ranking in a way that's more visually appealing than just showing this long line of notes. Right now, I'd like to mention how Godzilla vs. Kong: The New Empire was a film that I believe to be a lot of fun. It has decent but sometimes spotty CGI and kaiju monster action that we all have always wanted to see. And I feel like this film, like what I feel is a trend with many other franchise films and blockbusters released in 2024 and recently, is very wacky and calls back to the franchise roots. I feel like this film works well enough with the human characters and with Kong and his subplot with Zuko. And I think the film does well enough with conveying a sort of message about parenthood. But I just feel like the human characters are a problem with this film, and everything from the development of the actual monster characters, including the villains, to the humans could be more nuanced. But I did enjoy this film, and it has a lot of fun, crazy monster action. Both A Different Man and Agro Drift, I felt like were interesting experiments that didn't always work throughout the entire runtime, but I felt like were serviceable enough and made their points. Bad Boys Ride or Die was an interesting and surprisingly human Bad Boys action film. I feel like both Immaculate and Late Night with the Devil were slightly unconventional but well-made horror films. Yeah, I believe the other ratings and rankings speak for themselves, such as here. And also, since I haven't heard anybody mention it, I'd like to mention how crazy it is that we got a film like Piece by Piece. It's weird that Pharrell Williams wanted to make a biopic about himself in Lego, but I felt like it worked very well in this film and still captured the tone of a Lego movie. And it's cool that we were able to get another Lego movie. I feel like a lot of these ranking placements and ratings for these films kind of speak for themselves. I felt like Heron was a solid thriller. Same thing with Blink Twice and Trap. Sonic 3 I'll get to in a second. I've reviewed watching Chapter 1. I thought Beetlejuice was a very good sequel, though not quite as good as the original Beetlejuice. And Quiet Place Day 1 was also a very good prequel that had a human story. That surprised me with how much it had to say about the value that people put into relationships, fear, and the human experience. Sonic 3, which I'd like to talk about specifically, I felt like was much better than the first two Sonic films, and a large step above them, which surprised me. I mean, this film has better looking direction, CGI, editing, villains, character dynamics, team dynamics, stakes that we feel are real, a lesser focus on the human characters, and actual character development for both Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic himself, and even little spurts of development for other characters. Of course, I'm only saying this comparatively, and I believe that this film could have done a better job in each of these categories, but everything it did do was serviceable. From what we saw of Shadow in this film, he was well used and well voiced by Keanu Reeves, but I felt like they really could have done more with him and kind of wasted him by the end. Overall, I'm happy to see that this Sonic film is less generic than the other films in every way, and that it's really the kind of the Sonic film that fans have been wanting, but there's still room to improve. But I had fun with Sonic 3. Overall, I give it an 8.6 out of 10. Now we really get into the territory where I consider the films to be great and of high quality. I feel like Saturday Night was a very solid and well-told and directed flick. Sasquatch Sunset was also an interesting experiment. Wicked surprised me and kind of did everything it needed to do well, and I felt like was pretty entertaining. I have some problems with it, but this isn't a Wicked video. And yeah, I liked all these films. I feel like they delivered enough on what I wanted them all to be. I feel like Here was actually a very poignant film, with Super Slash Man, the Christopher Reeve story, being a very well-made documentary. And the rest here, I think, speaking for themselves, with Alien Romulus and Monkey Man being very solid films. I think my only hot take here is Rebel Moon Part 2. Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, continues Zack Snyder's smorgasbord melting pot of many sci-fi influences, as well as other tributes and inspirations, such as heavy metal. And like heavy metal, I don't think this film is meant to be critiqued as high art. It's supposed to be entertaining and fun and just sci-fi action that is pretty mindless but entertaining. And I believe that this film succeeds at that. Though it can be done better in many facets, the film still attempts to do character work and has enough of it. So I believe this film is good enough and entertaining sci-fi action movie. I give it a 8.8 out of 10. Now we move into the top 20. Challengers is a film that's grown on me. When I first watched it, I definitely liked it and thought it was just about great. After having sat with it, I really realized how powerful and effective of a movie it really was. I don't believe it's a 10 out of 10 or perfect or a monumental piece of cinema, as many others have been saying, but I think it is a very good and solid flick that makes the case for mid-budget movies. Imagine if we got more films like this every year instead of a sequel to every franchise possible. This film has great direction, writing, cinematography, a score that everybody's been talking about, at least everybody who's seen it, great acting. Challengers just completely plays around with the form of film and makes the best possible story out of just the relationship between three people. It is both an intense sports film and a psychological drama to an extent. Okay, well, mostly the latter, but the tennis scenes are filmed really well, and they're just exhilarating to watch with the editing and the camera and the use of slow-mo. I mean, you should just really watch this movie yourself if you haven't already. Yeah, Challengers is just a very well-made thriller/drama that explores themes such as the relationships between people, friendship, and, well, sexual things. Yeah, it's a very well-made film. I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Moving on, here we get into the top 15 and top 10. For the films that I haven't talked about, The Bike Riders, I feel like is a very well-made film that explores themes of responsibility, consequence, masculinity, and independence very well. Conclave is also a very well-made film. Transformers one I've talked about, but I'd like to make a detour. Ever since I first learned about its existence about a year and a half ago from the time that this video should be releasing, I've been very excited for Megalopolis. I mean, why wouldn't I be? It has Francis Ford Coppola, one of unarguably the greatest filmmakers of all time, who's made multiple films that defined an entire century, coming back to direct a film that seemed like it was going to be his truest masterpiece yet for the 2020s. I was hoping and expecting this film to be great. Maybe my hopes wouldn't be so high if I had watched Coppola's entire filmography, including his most recent films. I have heard about each of the films that he has made, but I've really only watched the Godfather films, Apocalypse Now, The Conversation, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and some of One for the Heart. In other words, I've only in full watched his greatest films. When first watching this film and even seeing some of the trailers and early reactions, I was taken aback, as I expected this film to be much better. But at the same time, after watching it, I feel that this film has a lot going for it. I feel like there's a lot of great things happening in this film, though it has some massive flaws. The film is just strange. It feels like it's broken up into at least thirds unintentionally, and the pacing, of course, feels very janky and unnatural. My other problems with this film include its editing, lighting, and some of the actual direction choices. Some shots in the film really feel aimless, and this is not helped by the fact that the editing in this film has no real continuity. But these are really only issues in the first hour of the film, which happen to be the most traditional hour. The rest of the film is either done in this strange prose and at other times is directed completely experimentally. I believe the film works at this point. I know this isn't much of a review and I plan to make a full-length video critiquing Megalopolis, but yeah, I respect it as an experimental film and I believe it really works in the latter half and by the end. I give this film a 9.1 out of 10. I feel like the director's cuts of Rebel Moon, though definitely bloated and full of some unnecessary content, are better than the original film. Neither of these movies need to be up to almost 3.5 hours long, as the first one is 3.5 hours long and the second one is almost 3 hours. But these cuts do deepen the world building and just allow us to spend more time in this world with these characters for each individual film. But these director's cuts establish further background and development for the villain of this film, making him more intimidating and showing actually what he does and why he's so formidable. In addition to, in the second film, spending more time with Anthony Hopkins' robot character Jimmy, as well as further explaining Kora's backstory and why she is sought after by Atticus Noble, two plot points that were very underdeveloped in the original cuts. My ratings may still be inflated, but I did enjoy these director's cuts for Rebel Moon. I give them a 9.2 overall. Deadpool and Wolverine is a film that I talked about briefly while talking about 2024 superhero films in one of my most recent GES videos, but I promise to talk about it more here, and I will. In that video, I really just said that this film is every Marvel's fan's dream, and it works enough on a character level in terms of Wolverine and Deadpool. I wish this film spent more time nuancing each of the characters and developing the villains, as they are the most weak point of the film, and I wish that this film called back to characters from the previous Deadpool films, such as Colossus, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, and others, but at least Blind Owl gets time to shine. And it is kind of cheap how they dealt with Vanessa and gave Wade his motivation for this film, but it works enough, and the film is very entertaining. The action scenes are entertaining, and of course we finally get to see Wolverine in his comic accurate suit. And unlike recent pieces of both TV and movies, the meta humor in this film does not feel overplayed, and actually works, because of course it's supposed to for the character of Deadpool. But it's well written enough and not as cheap as something like Rick and Morty is sometimes. This film is just a lot of fun. They try to pack as much possible into this film, with there being so many jokes and references and cameos and action that is enough to please any fans of these characters. And I like how this film is directed at times. There are definitely some beautiful shots, and the CGI isn't too bad throughout the film, but the direction never really gets intimate enough and never really elevates the characters. It may elevate the action, but the action isn't, of course, as great as it could be, and the choreography isn't as great as other Deadpool films. But the action still works and feels epic on a scale different from other Deadpool films. It was cool how they used the Void and introduced the Deadpool Core, and overall, this film is very entertaining and action-packed and serves its characters well enough. I just wish the film got a little more intimate and covered new ground in a way that was more nuanced, developed, deep, and complex for each of these characters. But still, this film is very entertaining, and yeah, what else can I give it but at least a 9.2 out of 10. Though I don't believe Furiosa to be as good as Mad Max Fury Road, it is a very different film, and I respect it for that. It goes full Mad Max in terms of the fact that it's just crazy and strange, and this seems to be the film that George Miller has always wanted to make, just with a bigger budget and more creative control, as this film has scope and just feels epic in the Mad Max universe. Furiosa has great character work and innovative mise-en-scène direction. This film develops great heroes and villains alike in this mythic tale of morality and ethics. I give this film a 9.3 out of 10. Nosferatu is a very show, not tell, intimate and character-based adaptation of the story of Dracula, and I'm all here for it. The film is very atmospheric, well shot, and has great cinematography. My only real problems with this film are the fact that it gets too self-indulgent at times. It focuses more on the mythos than the story, and I felt like it could have been scarier. Here they are, the top films. A Complete Unknown was a very well-shot biopic that was surprisingly emotionally resonant, and same thing with Robot Dreams, a lesser-known film that is animated and I highly recommend. Gladiator 2 is a film that I will defend because Ridley Scott came to play with this film. On its own, I feel like this film has great action and has themes of masculinity that are portrayed well. Denzel Washington has a great performance in this movie and is a good villain. The acting is done well, and I like how it calls back to the first movie. Even though it is not as good as the first movie, this film still has great cinematography, editing, and direction itself. As for Anora, I mean, why bother hearing me talk about it? Anora is great, and you should watch it for yourself. Anora is a film with a simple plot and premise, but very complex characters, and it tells a story about maturity, responsibility, and coming of age in a sense. The film contrasts Anora, a young working class woman with actual life experience. Then she gets her big break when she meets and starts a relationship with the inexperienced Vanya. From here, things get crazy and we go on a wild ride where we see that class doesn't necessarily define one's maturity, responsibility, or character, as Anora comes into her own. And, well, actually, you should go watch the movie. I give this film a 9.7 out of 10, as it is a well-made movie with a powerful message for young people. Many are calling Brutalist a new American epic and a masterpiece. And yeah, I largely agree with these sentiments. It is an historical period piece drama that is very well shot and directed with good cinematography. This long historical drama covers much ground, including one's satisfaction with their place in society. For these reasons and the ones written above, I give this film a 9.7 out of 10. And yeah, I decided to switch the order and put this above Anora. Wild Robot is a beautifully animated, directed, and performed film. The film has main characters we like and come to care for, and it has very mature themes that it conveys well and properly. It is one of the best animated films I've seen recently. I give it a 9.8 out of 10. Perfect Days is kind of a masterpiece that I think can really resonate with anybody, as its themes are universal. The film, of course, has great writing and direction, being directed by Wim Wenders, and it also makes great use of silence. And the film is just beautiful at times. It'll silently put you into the mind of this character and show you the beauty of the simple things in life. I give this film a 10 out of 10. Moving on from the number 2 pick is Doom Part 2. And yeah, what else would number 1 be? I've already made a small video about Dune Part 2 and why it's so great. But this one was a great sequel and really the full package. It has great cinematography, direction, acting. It builds upon the character of Paul Atreides and the story more and builds upon the first film. It's really just a great blockbuster. I give this film a 10 out of 10.